Building more walls, fences, and barriers on the border with Mexico is at the center of the current government shutdown. For the latest on what's happening on the Texas border, reporter Julián Aguilar of the Texas Tribune joins us now via Skype from El Paso. Julian, you were just on the border the other day, a couple of days ago, when the president came to town, and you described kind of a scene of protesters and counter-protesters, but really at the core of it, whether or not people want the wall depends on who you ask.
That's exactly right. So the Texas Tribune, we were in McAllen for the president's visit, and yeah, several hours before Air Force One even touched down, there were hundreds of protesters lining the street leading up to the airport. But surprisingly enough, for the Rio Grande Valley and the border in general, which people assume is a Democratic stronghold, and they do vote that way, but there are quite a few supporters of the president and his initiative. Even some folks that said that they supported the shutdown. That those folks that were out of work, they felt for them, but they had to risk the current situation in order to get things done. And in their minds, getting things done was building the wall and keeping with the president's agenda.
You've grown up in El Paso your whole life. You've been reporting there on this topic. When it comes down to the people who actually live next to the wall, what happens? I mean, what is their view on it? Is it because they have to deal with the traffic that they tend to support a stronger fence or a wall or barrier?
Well, the people that do support it, that's what they say. And I think a lot of folks that aren't from Texas or even aren't from the border in Texas, they don't realize that at least in Texas, we have 1,254 miles of the border. So, for example, in El Paso, there's been fencing here for years. There's been the fencing that was constructed after the 2006 Secure Fence Act, and that is just north of the banks of the Rio Grande. So it's pretty parallel to the way the river runs, and it's on federal land. But if you go downriver in Brownsville, in Hidalgo County, for example, a lot of this wall that's currently there is a half a mile, even a mile north of the river. So it cuts right across private land. On one side they say, hey, you know what? I'm sick of these people going through my private land. I'm sick of them traversing through my farmland. And, I like the security that the fence has, and some of them are for the wall. But I think they are outnumbered by a lot of folks that think the wall is a symbol of intolerance and hate, as we've heard several times before. You think that some people say it's a waste of time. They support Border Patrol. They want to see more men and women on the ground, more technology. And then you also have the environmentalists that say, look, this is going to disrupt the water flows. This is going to disrupt wildlife. But I'd say on the whole, from what I saw in McAllen, most people were against it. But still, again, to be fair, there were a lot of people that were for the president and his agenda.
All right. What about Mexico and the steps that that country is taking? They have a new president who campaigned ferociously against his predecessor, said that he should be taking a stronger position against President Trump and the wall. But now that he's in office, what's happened?
You have President Lopez Obrador that's he is taking a Mexico first sort of policy stance, and I think a lot of people were surprised when it was reported that Mexico had agreed to this remain in Mexico program with respect to immigration and asylum seekers that had to wait in Mexico. And then a few days later, there were reports that he did in fact not say that. But we've also seen a situation in Tijuana where the caravan is there and the Mexican government seems overwhelmed and they're trying to do what they can. So I think while we know what President Trump says and what he wants to do and what he believes, it's still a little bit of a gray area with respect to our neighbors south of the border. But you are correct that the President Lopez Obrador is very much into Mexico first and trying to reassert Mexico's independence when it comes to relationship with the United States. But I think this is going to be interesting to see what unfolds with the new trade deal and also with what happens with respect to the wall.
All right. Julián Aguilar of Texas Tribune joining us via Skype. Thanks so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.